Yeah, I'm just waiting for you. I just folded while I'm in here.
Keep it warm.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming to order. This is the Finance Committee meeting for February 8th, 2024. We are in the City Council chambers, and we have our members present for the committee. We're missing one. So this is a new committee, first time this committee has met. So I want to just introduce the members of the committee. Actually, they can introduce themselves. So to my right is
Ryan Locke, Northwest District.
Okay, and to my left?
Adam Austin, Southeast District.
Okay, and Rich Taylor is at a personal engagement tonight, so could not be with us, but we do have a quorum. And then also I want to just thank the other counselors that are here. Do you want to introduce yourself, Ms. Minar?
Shannon Minar, if I can say my name properly. Shannon Minar, Northeast District.
Great. And President?
Tony Green, South Central District.
Great. All right. Thanks for being here. Now, I do want to kind of go through some of the experts and introduce them that I've got tonight. And if everybody was able to get into the Teams file folders, I've got some expert testimony that has been put in there and a couple that are still coming. But so we've got right now, Jeremy Cashman, City Engineer, will be speaking on behalf of the city. Benjamin Legg is our legal counsel. We have David Littlejohn over here, who is Transportation Systems Administrator and our ADA Coordinator. We have Sergeant Zach Hasty from the Carmel Police Department. We also have Chief Major Barlow. Thank you, Major, for coming tonight. In the packet was testimony from Hillary Icebrands, who's the Federal Highway Administration Senior Safety Engineer, Team Leader, Safety and Design Technical Service Team. That's a long thing. So hopefully you had a chance to go through that. And also Jerry Torr is submitting some testimony to us as well. So before we get into, I guess, the nitty gritty, I thought I might just kind of set the tone and create some context. So right now, before us, we are working on Ordinance D 2696-23. And this was introduced and sponsored by Councilors Austin, Dr. Hannon, Kevin Ryder, and myself. Obviously, two of those counselors remain. So if anyone would like to appear as sponsors going forward, happy to do it. But I wanted to make the point that the only change that we're working on as per this ordinance is line 22, that 20-mile-per-hour speed limit within roundabouts. Line 24, no person shall drive a motor vehicle in excess of 20 miles per hour within a roundabout. All right. That was introduced back in November, I believe. I may be a little off on that, but November. And so we've had lots of time to work on this. So I am going to just kind of set the tone as to where we are now, some 3 months later. And some of this comes from the current in Carmel. I see that they're here, and they were nice enough to put an article in the newspaper that kind of set a roundabout, and that got a lot of attention as to why would we set a speed limit in the roundabout. So what I want to preface that our conversation tonight really is about not the speed within the roundabout, but it is going to be the speed limit if we decide that's the right thing to do. And I think I stated when we introduced this, the whole purpose of this is to get a fair hearing, to get a reading, to get input from the public, which we've done. And but it is really the 250 feet that is signed with a 15-mile-per-hour caution or advisory speed limit. That's 250 feet before you reach the roundabout. The roundabout, and then the same thing, the exit is another than 250 feet past the roundabout, and it's signed on all 4 entry and exits. Now, there are some roundabouts that are 200 and some are actually a little bit longer, but 250 was generally a good starting point and kind of an average or a directional. So what I did was, and all this was in your packet, but I'm going to go over to the podium so I can use the camera. And in December, I did a survey to the people that I could find, and we ended up with 1,301 residents of our community responding to my survey. So I thought I really got a good, I was able to capture what people were saying. And all of you are aware of the very animated emails that we receive. You must do something. And then on the other side, if you do anything, I'll never vote for you again. It was every extreme. And that was very difficult for me to, kind of weigh it and try and add any objectivity to this very subjective subject. So what I did is, and I just want to summarize, and I've got some data here, but basically overall, what hit me was that of those 1,301 respondents, and my survey was designed in a way to make sure you actually were in crosswalks. So I asked lots of questions in order to have a good sample. But if you ever used a pedestrian crosswalk, 40% of the people I represent said they felt unsafe. And so to me, that was an eye-opener. And I just made some notes that, and this is available, all the council has it, and I can make it available to the public if anyone wants it. But this was done in December. So if you were in a crosswalk, if you've ever used a crosswalk, did you feel safe crossing the street? 39.68% said yes, no problem, I do feel safe. But on the other side, there were then the 40.71% of those respondents, and I believe this was a sample of 1,076. So if you'd never used a crosswalk, you didn't get to answer this question. So out of my 1,300, 1,076 people had actually used a crosswalk. Now, this is where it gets a little bit more subjective, because I did ask, well, if you felt unsafe, what do you think, what made you feel unsafe? And I gave as many possible reasons as I could think of. So no raised crosswalk you can see, no flashing beacons, which we're now starting to put up, poor design, that would never happen with our engineering team, distracted driver or other, but the majority of these 1,076 people who then answered they felt unsafe, which was, I want to say 400, I'll find it here, 438 people listed speed as the main reason why they did not feel safe. Now, good to know, people who drive in our roundabouts, clearly the majority, 83.86% of them, no problems. They feel safe, well-designed, well-signed, etc. So I was glad to learn that. And then I just tossed out to just try and get some kind of idea as to thinking 15 mile per hour, which is how the advisory signs read now, or 20 miles per hour. You can see that 40% think it should be 15 and 30% think it should be 20. But there was a group of the entire survey that thought the same speed as the road itself, which is the way it is currently signed. That is the law, that whatever the road is signed, that's the technical speed if you ignore the advisory. No change and no opinion. And as my kids call me, boomer or whatever that derogatory phrase is, I wanted to make sure, yes, there was clearly skewed towards people in my age group. I can call myself old, but we were pretty evenly, we had a good sampling from all age groups who were using our roundabouts. So hopefully this is helpful as we try and put a little bit of objectivity to what we're going to be talking about tonight.
Mr. President?
You know what, should I, yes, does anybody have any questions?
Mr. Chair, so you said it was, you did this study. First of all, thank you so much. 1,300, that's an impressive response, so thank you. Did you hire a company to do this?
No. Well, yes, I did. But it's a company we all know. So yeah, I did hire a company to make it. So I had no access to the data. It went to, as a matter of fact, I will just mention this. I was a little disappointed because it opened on December 14th, 2023 at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and it concluded on December 21st, basically 1 week. And I had many people who tried to respond after that period of time who wanted to because they heard about it from their neighbors, their friends, who could not. So I think our sample size could have been bigger, but I had no access to the data until it was compiled.
Okay. Which company was it that did it?
I'll tell you what, I'd rather talk about that offline.
Oh, okay.
Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, I do, and I just want to second thank you for pulling this information together. It's a great kind of start to the information needed to make decisions like this. Wondering if you just have context on kind of the initiation of it. What got us to the point of getting the survey out and asking the public for feedback? Obviously, we do get emails, I get more now since January, on issues like this, but would love just kind of the background on
Sure.
how this arose to see kind of where to go from there.
Yeah. So, couple of comments, me personally, and then I'll allow the rest of the council to make their comments, how this came about. Technically, the mayor is the one that offered this ordinance. He tried it about 2 years ago. It was not well received. It also included a component of requiring turn signals in roundabouts. And I personally was not in favor of that, so that did not go through. But he then, towards the end of last year, I personally was hearing from my constituents out on the campaign trail. I was hearing from people there. You have to do something about speed. And as I kind of looked at Tony and Adam, we were getting feedback from people who were beginning to write us. That was the impetus. So when this was introduced, the statement that I made was that we've been talking about this for 3 years. I don't know if we should put a speed limit in the roundabout zone. I don't want to say in the roundabout. I'm pretty sure we should not in the roundabout, but in the roundabout zone. But I want it to have a hearing. I want to get the experts involved. I want to give citizens their opportunity to give input, and then we decide as a council which is our job. So I have no preconceived notions right now. But now as I've gotten into this, talked to the experts, talked to the National Highway Administration, talked to some other engineers, it may be time to look at this because Carmel has 150 roundabouts. No other community in the country has that many, and when they're stacked on top of each other and traffic is moving, the feeling, it may not be true, because I also want to say our roundabouts are very safe. We do not have a lot of incidents like we're reading about in Indianapolis, et cetera. But the way the pedestrian feels, are there things we can do to help? Now, this is a phased approach. There are raised crosswalks. There is speed. There is rapid flashing beacons, which we've already started to implement. My theory was that it is, you can't raise every crosswalk in Carmel, and you can't put up rapid flashing beacons everywhere. So speed, and I am going to offer a proposal of how we proceed forward should the committee want to consider it. But you can't do it everywhere all at once, except you could do speed a lot faster than some of those other options.
Mr. Chair, may I?
Yes.
Couple of comments. One, specifically, my husband and I walk every day just about, and we travel 131st to Gray Road to 126 to Needlers to get our cup of coffee almost every morning. And I will say, it is like Frogger trying to cross into those roundabouts, taking our lives into our own hands many times. But with that said, has the fire department had any kind of concern about the raised options for the pedestrian walk? Because I know that was one of the issues that Is it within this purview to talk about
Yeah,
that tonight?
absolutely, absolutely. So if I may, that is an issue that has raised. As a matter of fact, City Engineer Cashman and I were speaking about that this afternoon. What I can tell you is, I don't want to steal your thunder. Do you want to say what's coming?
Yeah, Jeremy Cashman, Director of Engineering. I don't know exactly what you're going to say is coming, but
The federal.
yeah, so there's a couple things, and I'll first drop back and do a little history because we did, when we kind of, trying to say reimagined or redid Rangeline Road and the streetscape that it is today, we did have these conversations over, the main goal is to make Rangeline Road more walkable. There was a concern over the amount of vehicles a day that we could process on there. But we were able to take the lanes away and then replace the signals with roundabouts. And, today people may not, sometimes we get congestion complaints, but it basically processes more vehicles a day than it did before. A lot of that's because of the roundabouts. But at that time, we took the opportunity to use raised pedestrian crossings. So on Rangeline, we have several mid-block crosswalks. If you remember, before we did the project, there was no way to cross Rangeline between basically Executive Drive and City Center. So there was some discussion then over the raised crosswalks, whether or not they're actually good for vehicular response, things like that. And then it was kind of during that time frame, we got together and actually Henry Mistetsky, our redevelopment commissioner or redevelopment director, kind of took the walk down, kind of what we're doing as a city, what we're aiming to be, but then also, we kind of look back through the data and, as I go around and speak on roundabouts, different things, one of the things that I'm most proud of is our population now. We've basically, from 1996 to today, we went from 30,000 people to over 100,000 people. During that time frame, our land mass did, roughly grew at the same rate as our population did. And last year we had less personal injury accidents than we did in 1996. So that is all with regards to what we were doing infrastructure improvements. That's roundabouts, that's some access management. But the part in the discussion over the education component, right, is that, the most important thing about, I'm not a firefighter, I don't tend to play one, but, we try to take them into account in everything we're doing. The most important thing is to get to where they're going safely. And you don't need to be going 70 miles an hour where you're going. Again, I'm not a firefighter, a lot of respect for them over there, but then also, everything we're doing from a road safety wise is making sure they go on less calls. So then that way, if you're not going on as many calls and you're able to get there safely. So that is, and it's a concern. Nationally, it's kind of this misnomer, so much that I've talked to Chief Hallbush about not only going to speak to other transportation agencies about roundabouts, but trying to work my way into a fire convention and talk and look at our run data, our timing, things like that we can look at historical rates and we can share some of the successes we've had in our collision data as well.
But did you want to speak to ProWag?
Yeah, so that's the other good option. So at the federal level, there are, I'm probably going to misspeak on some things, basically guidelines around ADA compliance. I think the ProAg is kind of that guidance document that says what's going on. We have been keeping an eye on it for the last 15 years because there was rumors that they were going to mandate that all multi-lane roundabouts actually be signalized, like real signal. Guidance came out within the last 6 months that basically said, if you have a multi-lane roundabout, you will be required to do one of three things. That's either use rapid flashing beacons at pedestrian crosswalks, utilize raised crosswalks, and then also or do a hawk signal, which is, we're using a modified hawk signal at Smoky Row and Keystone to meter the school traffic. So we knew this was coming. And it actually, I I found it pretty favorable because I was a little bit worried what was going to happen, but we're already doing 2 out of those 3 within our roadway network. So we were a little bit ahead of the curve, and we have like some feelings now. We can get some data on what works best, what doesn't. So that's a positive. And but what will happen, and as our street department goes through on their annual resurfacing program, like part of the previous PROAG was whenever you resurface a roadway, you have to bring everything along the roadway up to ADA compliance. So if there's a curb ramp at a crosswalk, it's not cracked, it looks like it's in good shape, but it's not compliant with the current ADA standards, you have to take it out, put it back in. So like that's costs the city a lot of money. So that's where I anticipate now going forward with our resurfacing program, we will need to undertake either adding raised pedestrian crosswalks or the rapid flashing beacons.
So to answer your question, it's being mandated, so that kind of solved that problem.
Thank you, Mr. Cashman.
Yep, you're welcome.
Just a couple of other things as far as setting this up. I also, the big concern that I've heard is, so I did some research on enforcement. And I've spoken to both Judge Poindexter and we have Sergeant Hasty here. I spent an afternoon with Austin Meinhardt, who we went out and we evaluated the current technology that we have, radar and LiDAR, in order to be able to, which I know is also a concern of city engineering, is if we go to this effort to do something to try and control speed in the entry and the exit, is it enforceable? And so I'm going to ask Sergeant Hasty to share with us your thoughts on our ability to enforce, should council, don't know that that's going to happen, but should council do something to control speed on the entry and the exit of a roundabout. Yeah, okay. The point right there.
So we've looked at this a lot as well, and we've had the conversations amongst our traffic unit, and the enforceability of this is possible with our equipment that we have, and that there would be some challenges, but we can certainly do it with the equipment that we have and the technology that we have. I think it would be another tool for officers to use in their daily enforcement to have something like this. So it is enforceable. We do have the tools to do it. There would be some challenges, but we can do it.
Thank you, Sergeant. And you fill in. I'll just try and give the committee a little bit of context on the challenge. So one of the things, our officers, when they run radar, they are in their car. And so being able to place the vehicle where it's safe in order to do entry and exit is something that is, you just don't block a lane or get up on the multi-use pass. So there are, and I think this will be handled when we talk about my proposal of how we implement again, if we do or not. So, but we also have motorcycle officers who can easily be in different locations and can do this if, so that's one of the challenges. I think that was the major challenge that Officer Austin and I experienced.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. The motorcycles obviously have a mobility advantage and being able to go in places where a vehicle can't. Plus, we do have handheld units, radar units that are not dash mounted. We have those available to all officers to check out on a regular basis. So there's the ability to use that as well, so you could be more mobile instead of being confined to the limitations of your vehicle and the equipment that you have in your car.
Yeah, okay. So, and I don't know if, Jeremy, you've got any questions regarding that, or if you're comfortable, because I know that was a concern of yours. And I think it is a concern. I did get some questions ahead of time from Councilor Taylor also, so he was concerned about the ability to enforce it if something were to happen.
Yeah, I think my overall concern with the speed limit, just speaking freely, I'm probably more in favor of the 15 mile an hour. I know there are changes that need to take place at the state legislature in order for that to happen, but we have, just knowing we have a speed and a kinetic energy problem, so the more we can slow vehicles down, the better. That's why we went with the 15-mile advisory, just because there are other jurisdictions that might do 20 or 25 miles an hour. Part of the guidance is you can tailor that based on the roadway characteristics and our network. As we've pushed to construct more and more multi-use paths, I think one of those characteristics are pedestrian safety. So that's why I would probably lean towards the 15 mile an hour, just so if we did start changing things, we're not taking a 15 mile an hour per hour advisory sign down and putting up a 20 mile an hour sign. It almost appears that you're raising the speed limit. But the other side of things that concerns me is just knowing the number of interactions, conversations you have, and people basically say, well, I don't look at signs, or signs don't. So that's why I kind of lean more towards, in the future, going towards the raised pedestrian crosswalks, because we kind of coined this doing the Main Street project in front of the high school, like we need to control speed by design, not by sign. And so that way, just putting a sign up, that puts a lot of burden on police officers to actively enforce that if it's going to hold as much weight, I guess, as some of those design features.
Perfect. And then just for a little bit of clarity, so right now, the city, and I'll probably say this wrong, but the city is not allowed to sign, to set a speed limit below 20 mile per hour, but any municipality, but State Representative Tor has done some legwork on this and has support of leadership to make that change and give us the opportunity to trial or to set a speed that would be lower than 20 miles per hour. Now, obviously, it would have to pass and all that, but there is a path forward in order to meet Mr. Cashman's request. Councilor Awesome.
Yeah, I have a question, and this may be getting a little ahead, because I know you're going to talk about like how we would, if this passed, how we would implement it. Generally, and you can give vague figures, to replace signs, we have over 150 roundabouts. I assume 4 signs minimum in an intersection. There's possibility you may need 8. Whether the poles can be reused or not, I'm sure those are all variables. But if you were to ballpark it, what would be the cost to kind of change out all the signs in the city?
So I did, the street department does a very good job of keeping track of their work orders and their cost of work orders and things. So what I anticipate happening here is you'd probably need to go to the roundabout ahead sign and take the advisory placard off, and then you would need to set a location to set a new pole with the regulatory post. It would be a new post with a regulatory sign on it. It needs to be on its own post. And those, what they've estimated is around $1,500 per roundabout. So that includes, that's the sign, the post, cost to locates, a crew, and as well as equipment. So you do the math over 150 roundabouts, it's
About $250,000.
It's not cheap.
But I'm going to propose we're not going there. So, yeah. So I don't want everybody to get crazy. Yeah, yes.
And just some threshold questions, just to kind of level set. 150 roundabouts, is that just over, right? We're still building a few.
Yeah, I mean, we still, everybody always asks when are you going to be done building? I mean, we still have 10 or so plus or minus signals, and then, there's always some locations that we're investigating for either stop signs being replaced with roundabouts or,
so 150, 156, whatever the number is presently, how many of those are multi-lane? How many of those multi-lanes then are in compliance with the process by the feds that are being set for raised crosswalks or not? How many are we starting to kind of plan out? Just from a data perspective, would love kind of an inventory of what we have, where we are, and this might get to your later point of how this gets done. But if we're talking about a plan to address these things, if there's potential future legislation to change the number and it's 15 or 20. There are just a lot of moving pieces without kind of a front-end analysis of where we are from a data perspective with the roundabouts we already have. And I'm sure you have all that. I just haven't seen it.
Yeah, I mean, we're at around 10 or 12 roundabouts with the raised pedestrian crosswalks. And then we have probably around 10 or 12 roundabouts that have the rapid flashing beacons installed. We have done that at several locations, a couple locations on the west side and on the east side. So that's kind of where we're at on those two.
Are those the same roundabouts? And I guess my follow-up question is, we look at these wondering speed test, because ultimately many of the roundabouts, some of them you can't go faster than 20 to begin with. Some of them are slower, some of them are faster. Obviously there's some, I live out on the west side, northwest, some you can fly through, but those may not have a ton of pedestrian traffic. But focusing and honing, as we're looking at kind of implementation structure, which roundabouts deserve attention, which ones need that bigger investment of cash? Do all roundabouts necessarily need a $1,500 signage? And is there a way to mitigate some of these things with that planning moving forward on specific roundabouts with just more data? I'm wondering if we've done any of that or have seen or addressed.
Yeah, so if something passed that had a blanket speed limit over all the roundabouts, then you would need to treat them all equally. If there was a different mechanism where you said, okay, we want to be able to use this as a target to target certain locations, then we could develop a process to investigate a certain roundabout. We have some software that within the last month or so has allowed us to better extract speed data out of roundabouts. We just ran some of that. What we're seeing is a select few roundabouts that we did, you're getting about a 4 to 5 mile an hour reduction in speed in the circulating portion of the roundabout, raised crosswalks versus no raised crosswalks. And that actually goes to about between 6 and 8 miles per hour in the 85th percentile speed. So we do see that they are working. Again, that tool just became available to us, so we're still using it, but it would allow us moving forward to kind of target certain locations, especially like maybe multi-lanes that we're seeing more pedestrian traffic in.
And to that, I'm just wondering, like looking at the gross data then, if we know the delta, what is the original speed on those roundabouts? And I guess what I'm getting to, I can think of some personally driving around the city my whole life that are scary, that crossing them in the dark is a terrifying thing. Oak Ridge and 136th Street, people coming off is just a weird, you're in a dip, it's a weird spot. It's hard to look for a dog or a person coming. But knowing from that, feeling that structure, if there's a way for us to be more strategic about which ones and what to add and how to actually slow, because obviously the raised bump slows you down before you enter in a way that shifts behavior. A sign may not, specifically if it's set up in a way from a design perspective that you can take the racing line and go quickly through it, which is I think what we see kind of on outskirts, those bigger roundabouts. Those ones that are multi-lane that don't have a lot of traffic are ones that people can and do fly through. But just from a data perspective, before spending money fully on a blanket provision, is there a way for us to ensure that we're addressing those specific concerns in those? And then just from a top-end holistic perspective, from a traffic, how many pedestrian accidents are we seeing? Do we have data on pedestrian crossing? Which ones need attention? Which ones have more foot traffic that we could start with? Just throwing out a million questions all at once, but.
So I'll try to pick those apart. So, I mean, the first thing is I think it's good that you always want more tools in your toolbox, so that if you found, okay, we have this location, maybe we do have higher speeds, so maybe we do need to use the raised crosswalks. You might have another location that's, the speeds aren't as high, but like that, maybe we want to bring more attention to pedestrians crossing at night, so maybe that's where a rapid flashing beacon helps. As we've rolled the rapid flashing beacons out, my main focus was to put them in targeted areas where you're looking for to raising awareness for pedestrians crossing. I'm hesitant to just like deploy them everywhere, from a cost standpoint, a maintenance standpoint, but I don't want people to get to start disregarding them. So we want to be able to do things in the right way that they remain effective. And then I think it also opens up the ability to handle a good focus that would be good for our constituents that could probably be a nationwide leader in how are we educating around this? What's our process? Really educating rapid flashing beacons, because anecdotally, as I drive home, looking around certain areas, I will see a jogger jogging in place and right next to the button, and all they have to do is push the button and it would. So it's kind of, and that's different things. Some people don't want to slow traffic down, they're fine with it, but if you do want to feel safe crossing, you can do that as well.
Councilor Austin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Jeremy, I know this may get beyond but this is part of the reason why I thank Councilor Worrell for setting this up so we can have a larger discussion about pedestrian safety. First off, you've mentioned this before, but just for the record, what costs of, and not to pit one against each other, but the rapid flashing beacons, raised crosswalks, and I understand there might be a range depending on the number of lanes and.
Yeah, I think when you're looking at like new construction, raised pedestrian crosswalks, I think we've seen a varying range, but the most recent ones we put in were around $50,000 per roundabout.
And they're cheaper if we do them when we build the roundabout.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
We are investigating, okay, if we go into a retrofit scenario, how do we do that? We've had, I've seen some case studies of another municipality that they actually came here to look at our raised crosswalks and then implemented them over in Ohio. So we have some data on what worked and what didn't work when they were installing them.
For retrofitting?
Yes.
Is there any stormwater utility issues with that, or?
It depends. I mean, that's one of the other major things is whether or not you need to add. Do we add an inlet upstream of there to make sure that it's draining, or do we do some kind of hybrid approach where it's not all the way across like the ones we have on Rangeline Road, but it might kind of vary up and down through there. So.
And then if we just do rapid flashing beacon and paint, what are we looking there usually?
That's almost about the same price. I mean, because
Okay.
even if we purchase them and have the street department install them, there's still a cost of their time.
Is our opinion that if you have the raised crosswalk, you also need the flashing beacon? I know some areas we have both, or is it?
No, I don't think so. We, in front of the high school, we implemented the rapid flashing beacons on top of the raised crosswalks. That was through discussion with the high school and the library. My initial thought was just to go with the raised crosswalks initially.
Well, and then I'll make one comment before I pass. You did a fantastic job with near the high school. I think it's made a great improvement. I spoke to some SROs there, and they said it's made a huge difference. I think I've talked to Mayor Finkham about hopefully maybe treating this the same way we do road repaving, where we remove politics from it. No one's going to say I want them all in my district, but we do a look to see citywide where we want this and if we can help reach it financially. But I appreciate the work you're doing.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm gonna offer a suggestion on how we go about that. Councilor Green.
Yeah, good questions, and I agree with everything. Council Worrell hit on it, the holistic approach. There is, a really perceived fear, when people are pedestrians, especially families, elderly. I mean, there's been situations where I pulled up and I've seen an older couple go across, and I'm like, please make it. Type situation. But part of it is us understanding kind of what data we have, what data we need to figure out and how to prioritize to make the best situations for each place. Because as Councilor Locke said, there are places where, and I need to pay more attention to what the speed limits are when I come to get a feel for the different types of roundabouts and what speed is really needed. But there are roundabouts where, People, you can literally fly, like Councilor Locke says. Now, I don't know what flying speed is. Well, I kind of do, but I haven't seen it, driving through roundabouts.
Pilot,
But there are other roundabouts where, 30, 20, maybe even less. So it'd be interesting to know how many roundabouts do have a 20-mile-per-hour speed limit, or are there any? And kind of, that type of data.
Actually, I'd like to ask you about that program that you're using. Is that the Volkswagen?
No, this is a program that we got several years ago. It's called Streetlight Data. So it's when we did, I think, the 2020 bond program, we knew we would need to do some traffic data collection. So it was new to the market. So instead of paying a bunch of consultants to do the data collection for us, we've been able to get the data out of the system, and it basically uses just a lot of data, connected vehicle data, a lot of I don't understand all of it, but I know it gives us results. So they just got access to a lot more data. So now we're kind of starting to figure out different things that we can do with it.
I am going to ask if there are any members of the public who wish to speak, which may provide more context, and then we'll kind of make sure any of our other experts here. So we have two people that would like, okay, great. Let's do ladies first. And if you could just come up to the podium, tell us who you are. And I do know that you would like to show a video. So Hal, if you'll be ready to go on that.
Thank you. My name is Jackie Phillips. I live on the west side of Carmel at a roundabout at Town and Glebe Street, which is one of the main entrances into the Village of West Clay. For a little background, we built our house there 7 years ago, and since then, traffic has increased significantly, mostly because of all the new builds in Westfield. I think there's about 3,000 proposed new home builds in Westfield. So we've seen a significant increase, and just in Carmel in general, we've had a significant increase in new construction with homes, multifamily, and apartments. So, and I would like to say we did recently get a flashing crosswalk installed at that roundabout and a couple of the adjoining. The problem is they're not always used. Even though that little button is so easy to press, you would be surprised at how many people do not hit it, or it's disregarded. And I think part of that issue is because not every roundabout in Carmel is created equal, as we all know. And in this particular roundabout, we have a lot of landscaping and trees. So it's almost like a hill, and we have a lot of tall trees and hedges. You cannot, as a driver, see to the other side of that roundabout. So those crosswalks are immensely helpful if they're used because it alerts you that there might be someone on the other side. And then lastly, the visibility of that roundabout is an issue, but also I think the biggest problem too is there's a lot of distracted drivers. So my office, I work from home. My office is in the front portion of my house. So I stare out and I look at that roundabout and I see a lot. I see a lot of texting and driving. I see a lot of crisscrossing. The amount of people that think it's their personal Indy 500 and that take that speed limit. Actually, while we were here, my husband texted and said someone just took that roundabout probably 45 to 50 miles an hour and just slid and just screeched because people just take it so fast. So given that Carmel does promote walking and cyclists, I do think this particular roundabout, the way the Village of West Clay, if you're not familiar, we have a small business center where we have restaurants and dentists, and then we have an uptown. So there's a lot of walking between pretty much 126 and 131st between Coxall Gardens, and the way this our neighborhood is designed. And currently, it just doesn't feel safe. And we have a lot of Stratford senior citizens that cross over into the village to go to the library, get coffee. And kind of like what you said, Councilor Green, you're kind of like, fingers crossed, I hope they make it. And I've seen it even for children walking their bikes. And it feels scary to feel like I'm witnessing, once a week, maybe someone getting a close call to being hit, whether a child or a senior citizen. And while I'm not much faster than them, I also don't want to play Frogger. So lastly, I do want to show a couple of videos. In the last 14 months, we have had 4 accidents, significant accidents, everything from a car running into the Stratford building to a car actually going through the actual center of the roundabout. I'm not really quite sure how that happened, and a couple others, just so you can kind of see what is happening. And all of these have been reported to the Carmel PD because they've all taken out either trees along Town Road. There's been a lot of accidents, and one day I think it's not going to be so fortunate. So I'll zoom in here.
Jackie, if you'll pull that mic down too, if
yes,
you wanted
to
to
get
use
the-
your sound. Yeah, thanks.
And I'll try to do it.
So we may have to do that one again because
Yeah.
we were zooming in, so.
Oh, yeah. So I'll give a little, I could, that might help. Here we go. And for a little context, this was on Halloween. So there was a lot of children that were walking along this road right here and then coming around. So thankfully at the time that car hit that tree and thankfully avoided what you see, that black electrical box, or we would have been without power that night. So that was here. We'll go back. Next one. This is the one that ran through the roundabout recently around Christmas time and took out a portion of the tree. This is another one. You'll not see the car. And you'll see the lights hitting the tree in front. That's because twice he did a 360 in the middle of the roundabout. And the only reason why he stopped was because then he hit a curb and it caused him to come to a stop. So as you can see, that's just a handful that we've witnessed. And obviously there's times that I've not been home and neighbors reported, oh, did you see what happened? So it's one of those things that I am all support of the 15 or 20 mile speed limit. But my concern is, will that be effective? Because if people are already disregarding the speed limits, and so my encouragement would be a raised sidewalk because it will inherently force the driver to slow down. Like you don't have an option to not take the roundabout a little slower. And I know there's questions about emergency personnel. Well, emergency personnel go to Stratford probably daily due to falls and issues. But that I don't think that will impede on their services. And I've talked to we have a couple friends that are on the Carmel Fire Department, and they said that would not impede their calls. And also on 106th and College, there's a fire station there, and they have raised sidewalks. So I'm assuming the city would have thought hopefully that through before implementing one there, as just as an encouragement or an example of what would that mean for emergency personnel. But anyways, thank you so much for this proposal, and thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you for coming out tonight and speaking. Yeah, we'll have, we might have a question here. Okay, let's do that.
I don't know that it's just a question for you, but that's one of the flying corridors, which is just the speed limit. Nobody goes faster than the actual speed limit, but the town road corridor, which back before the roundabouts were built everybody was going 100 miles per hour through the stop signs anyway, when there were stop signs. Wondering if that is a place, like from the concept of looking at this more strategically, to see how fast cars are going, to slow them down. To your point, a speed limit change there may not change the behavior we're seeing on those videos, but would be great from a data perspective to know how fast people are going, what we can do in those strategic places to slow people down more, with more cash than 1,500 for your round. That roundabout, based on data right now, appears to need more than $1,500 of speed control. But would love data to analyze that and see as we move forward.
And maybe there's alternatives, like, you know how there's flashing speed limits for the school zones? I mean, I know that when I see like those little flashing when I'm coming up on a road, it kind of like almost gives me that reminder, oh yeah, check my speed limit. I mean, I know there's multiple options, whether it's a flashing, like watch your speed, here's your speed. There has to be something, I know not every roundabout, like I said, is created equal. Like on 146, there's not really a whole lot of crosswalks there. But where I'm at, it's a very pedestrian heavy, and so something would need to be maybe prioritized some over the others, like you're saying. Yeah. Thank you.
Great, well done. Thank you, Jackie. Yes, our next speaker.
My name is Jordan Cole. I'm a resident of Carmel. I live near Main Street in Midtown. Let me just start by saying I'm agreeing with everything that's been said, and I agree with lowering the speed limit in general and roundabouts and everywhere. I appreciate everything the City of Carmel does to make this a walkable and bikeable community for all ages. I moved here specifically for that. So with my 10-year-old daughter, we ride to school, and we ride all over town, run errands by bike. We have a cargo bike. She rides in the bike with me. And really the only time we feel stressed while walking or biking is when we have to cross an intersection. And in Carmel, that's a roundabout. And everyone's talked about the feeling of Frogger and unsafe, and I think that's a real serious issue because it's not just a feeling; it's an actual, like you said, taking your life in your hands. We're in a 100-pound bike that's limited to 20 miles an hour, and we're interfacing with people in 4,000-pound vehicles that can accelerate, in a second. So just the physics equation means that like one mistake by me or the car can lead to a dent in the car for the driver and an injury or a death for myself or my daughter. So I don't put much faith in a sign, whether it's a speed limit sign or even a stop sign, as you've seen by the videos. That's not necessarily going to stop anyone. I trust eye contact, and I trust concrete with the engineering does with design. Jeremy's already talked about this, but there's many studies to show, and it's obvious if you've driven a car that the design of the street is what determines the speed, not the speed limit. Design, not sign, was a great slogan. A good example of that is, Main Street. I think, if you ask anyone what the speed limit is there, they don't know necessarily, but they drive slow there, right? Because it's a 2-lane road with, narrow lanes and pedestrians and bicycles everywhere, so everyone knows to drive safe and slowly there. But you go on the highway and people drive 5 to 10 miles an hour over the speed limit because it feels safe to do so, because it's wide lanes and there's nothing else stopping them. So when it comes to roundabouts in Carmel, and I think I can kind of talk a little bit about, I'm not an expert, but I'm an enthusiast about engineering design. And so like say the city center and range line roundabout, which I cross once a week at least by bike. Coming into that roundabout, the lanes are extremely wide. There's nothing really slowing one down there. There is a raised crosswalk there technically, but there's about 4-foot wide sort of ramps to that crosswalk, right? So there's nothing sort of slowing you down. It's not a speed bump. It's like a ramp that you can just kind of zoom over. When you get in the roundabout, there's 2 lanes there, and it's about 32 feet wide. The average car is only 6 feet wide. So we have so much space there that, and then another thing is the entry into the roundabout itself, right, is 20 to 40 degrees. It's not a 90-degree turn. So everything about this design is telling the driver, you don't need to slow down. There's no reason to. You can go as fast as you need to get through this, and that's why people do when they can. So while I'm in favor of lowering the speed limit, we should all be realistic about how effective that will be. This should be the first step in designing intersections that can protect people in all transportations equally. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Anybody have any questions for Jordan? Okay, thank you, Jordan, for coming out. In the team's folder, I put in a study that shows that eye contact that Jordan just mentioned is a critical part of pedestrian safety. So when cars are 40 miles an hour, I don't remember the exact, all the data, but 40 miles an hour, it is not very likely that you will make eye contact with the pedestrian, but at 15 or 20 miles an hour, half that amount, there is, you do slow down, and I think we all see it on Rangeline Road. It is very easy, because I'm going so slow already, to let somebody go across to catch that eye contact and let them go. So if you get a chance to take a look at that. The only other thing that a couple of the engineers mentioned to me was, yes, maybe signage is not the end-all be-all, but we do have school zones. And I do, and my mom does, and I think two of my neighbors do. We slow down in school zones because it has been educated to me. Now, there may only be four of us, but maybe Sergeant Hasty can correct me on that. But it's a big deal. And so it can't, I don't want to give up on, signs, no one's going to pay attention to them. There are people who will pay attention to that. But that leads me to, before I tell you what I'm going to propose, I want to give David Littlejohn the opportunity. Do you have any? I know you did a lot of research for me. You had some data, some, maybe some empirical information. Do you have anything that you would like to propose or present that might help us as we go through making this decision?
I didn't necessarily bring anything specific. I thought maybe I'd be here to answer some questions, but I think this illustration kind of gets to the point of what you were saying. At 25 mile an hour, you have a 100-degree field of vision, basically, and at 45, it narrows down to about 65. So David Littlejohn, Transportation Systems Administrator, Department of Community Services. But yeah, to get back to this, as you're going 45, your field of vision reduces to 45 degrees. So you're really tunnel visioned, looking ahead, trying not to hit the cars in front of you, not paying attention to any pedestrians who may be waiting at a crosswalk or people who may be in crosswalks. And so, yeah, I think everybody's kind of on the same page. Putting up signs doesn't change human behavior, but physical features on streets that are used to calm traffic do change human behavior. So in the long run, I think it'd be more effective to put in raised crosswalks or bump outs for pedestrians, narrow lanes, put in landscaping to kind of comb their vision down. Things like that can all be used to slow down traffic, and it's been proven to be more effective than just signing and then enforcing.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
And just one thought there, just not to harp on the data and be that guy at this meeting, which I am that guy at this meeting. The only data point we have about a roundabout that we know the behavior of the individuals is the Glebe Street by the videos we saw. And that one, I think we should study after this immediately and figure out how fast cars are going and why and where, and maybe use some of that money to see if that's one that we should put on our radar to improve. But would love to know, even this chart, which roundabouts, how many roundabouts, are there specific roundabouts that people are going 45 or other ones that they're already going 15? From a data perspective, as we're looking to spend money or create an ordinance that goes citywide on something like this, we may be spending money on behavior that's already happening in 90% of the roundabouts where everybody's going 15 to 20 because that's the design and how it's set up. I just, from my perspective, would love to know before we spend that money, before we create a system where we have to take enforcement mechanisms by police that may have challenges or problems, or take other resources that we're using for specific things like school zone, where we know at specific times there are going to be 1,000 students crossing. So we go enforce and make sure that people are going slow there, that we strategically look at those things just from a data perspective to ensure that before we do kind of a blanket coverage and spend $200,000 that we're aligning. And again, I know you're going to get to kind of a plan and a process there, but I would love to just know that data point of where we are, what they look like, which ones are good to go. Will this really have that big of an impact in change of behavior, or is it just signage and ordinance for the sake of that? And are there specific ones we need to really change behavior and that money could go better, or our effort could go better to fixing those specific spots?
Yeah, I would say that's absolutely how we would prioritize projects. We wouldn't just, go out and start ripping out all the crosswalks and putting in raised ones, especially where they're not going to change anything and nobody's walking. And yeah, definitely we look at destinations for where they'd be more appropriate, like school zones, for example, parks, churches, central Carmel, places where there's maybe more density, where more people would be likely to walk because places are closer for people to get to by foot. Those would be the places where we start. We also respond to requests from the public to try and do our best to address those. So we would look into those to see where they might fit into the prioritization list. But yeah, we wouldn't just go out and try and replace everything all at once.
I'm going to jump in here with a couple of things, just because it's been brought up 5 times now. So the first thing is, this is not an easy topic. So I had no intent that we would vote on anything tonight, because I think we need to give the public time to. There literally are people who are very much against any changes. So I want to give everybody the chance to weigh in. But working with interim corporate counsel in some meetings, what I'd like to throw out as a possibility is that if we thought it was our duty to respond, and in my brain, I'm responding to the 40% of the people who said they were uncomfortable crossing at a roundabout. Could we give our professional team a tool that would treat a roundabout like a school zone? Now, what that means is that not that there would be a time frame on it, but the way our ordinance reads, a school zone is established by city engineering. If it makes sense, they then can set it up and do that. So this plan that Mr. Legg would have to write into the ordinance would give us the ability to say, we're creating a tool. Should professional engineering department decide that it should be used, that they could then do a variety of things, a multi-phase approach. One of those might be lowering the speed. One of them might be putting in the raised crosswalks, to your point, David, or putting in the rapid flashing beacons. So it would be on a case-by-case basis. And when I talked to Mayor Finkham, she liked that idea because it would give us a beta to even see if this makes a difference. It makes it easier to enforce because we're talking about 1 or 2 roundabouts versus 150, et cetera, et cetera. So there would be this tool that we could address the concerns of the people who are here speaking to us tonight and say, we're going to give our team the tool to go out and tell us. And then once they decide that a roundabout should be signed or something, then it was signed, because they don't have to have anybody else's approval to put in a raised crosswalk. But to be signed or posted, then that would go to the BPW to make that work. That is a process. Did I get it? 90% of what we talked about?
You're pretty close, yeah.
Pretty close, yeah. I'm not an attorney.
Benjamin Legg, Interim Corporation Counsel. So I just want to clarify on what the current ordinance is for school zones. So this council previously established school zones by setting the speed limit, setting the time frame in which they are enforceable, and setting the location where schools are present. This is a good part set by statute. Where they're enforceable is where signs are present. The signs are placed at the request of the city engineer and with the approval of the Board of Public Works and Safety. So the council sets the rule. They said, this is the rule. The city engineer does their job to be able to conduct the study to say, in this particular location, it meets the criteria for addressing a particular concern. They then present that to the Board of Public Works and Safety using the safety provision of that board to do a review, and they say, yes, we approve the signage to be located here. And when the signs are then placed by the street department, it then becomes enforceable under the ordinance that this council presented. The benefit of that is, from a school zone standpoint, it was as new schools were being built, as we had charter schools or whatever it might be, that we're not always having to come back to council for it. The council set the standard, they set the rule, and then it went to BPW to have those signs be approved and placed. The benefit in this instance, and we could use that same mechanism, that same procedure, would be council sets the rule, engineering conducts the study, the recommendation is made, and then studies can be conducted on that particular roundabout and see, is it effective in lowering the speed or not? And decisions can be made for the removal as well of those signs as well by the Board of Public Works and Safety. It allows for a piecemeal approach. You talk about the cost associated with if you were to have a wholesale approach here, and it allows it to be very case specific, and it would just be, and it would mirror something that's already in place. We have a similar setup for parking and distances around the parking around schools as well. That the council set the standard, it set the factors to take into consideration, and then it delegated the placement of those signs at the recommendation of the city engineer with the approval of the Board of Public Works and Safety.
Councillor Allison. So just a few questions on that. I'm going to throw a couple questions at once. I apologize there. So you would be suggesting we create something similar to a school zone. Would it be called a school zone or not?
No. The schools, that's the mechanism that we currently use for our school zones. What I'm proposing, no, it wouldn't be a school zone.
So to be similar where basically, unlike saying we're going to do the lowered speed limits at every roundabout, we can pick which ones we want to do it.
It would say something akin to speed limits are set at the access points of roundabouts. You could say the 200 feet. Where signs have been placed. Signs are placed at the request of the city engineer and with approval of the Board of Public Works and Safety.
But this council would give away their control at that point. Once they passed it, then deciding which intersections, all of that would be really executive as approved by the BPW.
You could look at it that way. What I would state is that it is something that's already occurred in 2 instances by this council. It allows for a board which is set up as the safety board to do a comprehensive review in an open meeting and to react quickly to the extent that a need needs to be addressed or not. And equally so to the extent that this council then decided, actually, we do not like that approach, or we do not like the way this is being handled. Council, it is an ordinance of council that council can amend and repeal and bring back. So it's something that if council doesn't like the way that it's being handled, they could come back and say, no, we want to handle it. It's not an absolute. But yes,
we'd have to repeal the law.
You'd have to amend it.
Okay. And then, so if you speed in a school zone right now, it's a much higher ticket than if you speed in another area, correct?
It is, yeah.
What is do you know what that is?
I don't remember off the top of my head. It is a higher fine, and I need to double check as well. I know we've had some changes with the transition of the court over to the new place, and they just updated the pamphlet. But it did used to be an automatic appearance in court as well.
Yeah,
but I don't know if the judge has amended that or not. I'd have to double check on that.
And I haven't kept up to date, but I know there's also legislation proposed during the legislative session to put traffic cameras in school zones. I know
NDOT is working on a project right now where they're looking at it. It's not connected to law enforcement databases, but it would be more of like a civil fine that NDOT would send somebody, that I think it would end up suspending the registration or something if they didn't pay it. But it'd be a minimal amount of fine. It would be a minimal fine, but it would go off your license plate. But it's not reported to the BMV or anything.
Okay.
But it is they're getting ready to test, I think, 4 locations. I don't know exactly where those are. Somewhere around 465.
Well, there was pending. Yeah, I know Representative Blake Johnson submitted. I don't know where, I haven't followed where it was at in the process, but it was speed cameras because some cities just can't hire enough cops to enforce speed laws. So that's kind of an option they're looking at. So in this, if it was treated like a school zone, would it have the higher ticket or would it be? Okay,
it would not.
Okay,
school zones are statutory. This is not. The only similarity is that it regulates the speed, and it would regulate it. This council would set a rule related to the speeds around roundabouts. The mechanism that this council currently uses to regulate speed zone would be the same. The mechanism is such that you would set a rule, and that rule would have parameters around it and factors associated with it that would then delegate to the Board of Public Works and Safety to install signs. When signs are installed, it would become enforceable at those locations.
Okay.
But it's just the mechanism. I would separate the school zone entirely from it. It's just the mechanism.
It's just a comparison for us. Yes.
It's what's been done before by this council, so it's something that I think there's a familiarity there.
Right. So maybe I shouldn't have said school zone. With the same mechanism we used when we controlled parking around the high school. The BP, we give the engineers the opportunity to agree or disagree with the location. We gave them that tool, and then BPW approves it.
The council sets the rules, sets the standards, sets the factors to take into consideration, and delegates the placement of signs. And it becomes enforceable when the signs are present.
Yep.
At that point in time, if someone violates, it would be a violation of that provision of city code. The officer who's writing the ticket would be writing the ticket under that provision of city code.
Yep.
That's how it would work.
Great.
But it's where signs are located.
Yep.
So it just allows for flexibility and for precision, surgical precision in the placement of those signs and the enforcement areas.
Great. And Sergeant Hasty, you had a
I just wanted to add something real quick. All the talk about the school zones reminded me of we kind of we have a similar experiment going on in Carmel right now that's been going on for a long time. We've got one school zone that I'm aware of that does not have the flashing beacons. It's just got the signage, University High School on 116th Street. I've been a part of the traffic unit for over 10 years, and one of our primary goals is to go out and slow people down in school zones. Well, as Benjamin said, we've started adding more and more of the beacons to the school zones to accompany the signs, because per the statute, the beacons aren't required. It's just something to help draw attention to the signs that are there. Whenever we've had those in conjunction, the amount of compliance has gone way up. Just in my personal experience, stopping people in school zones on University High School, I mean, we all kind of become numb to signs after a while, but the flashing beacons bring that extra bit of attention to the signage. So those two things in conjunction, we see a really, really high compliance rate. Just something for you guys to take back and talk about when you discuss this. I think the multifaceted approach would really be beneficial in something like this to help bring some more attention to the signage. And like I said, we've seen the compliance rate go way up with drivers and slowing down in the school zones.
Very good. Thank you. Thanks. Councilor Minar.
So to be clear, you believe those yellow blinking signs like a Pavlovian response?
I can speak from like the data that I've seen, the amount of speeders that we've had. 116th Street, Woodbrook Elementary School. So that one did not have the flashing beacons for several years. We would have constant problems with people just flowing 35, 40 through there. Well, whenever we added the beacons to bring attention to the school zone and the signage, we got a much higher compliance rate of the school zone awareness by having the conjunction of both of those tools working together. And it's slowed people down and brought attention to the area that might just be passing through from Fishers or wherever the case may be. And the driver reviews to us is like, oh, well, I didn't even know there was a school here on 116th Street out at University High School. I mean, it sits off the road, and if you miss the signs, then there's nothing else to bring your attention to the fact that there's a school zone there. So we've seen the compliance rate go up significantly with the conjunction of the multifaceted approach to that.
And then just one more while we're talking about kind of enforcement. If we were to move to an approach where we created a tool for engineering to set up specific danger roundabouts or whatever the term is going to be, or roundabouts where speed control is necessary, or something like that, do you feel from a police perspective then and a resource perspective that it would be easier to allocate resources to control some as opposed, I mean, citywide, if we did every roundabout, that's every road in the city. We're talking about trying to figure out a road, a way to use guns and shoot radar, LiDAR on cars that are moving between 20s and 40s, and it's everywhere. But having a few to focus on, does that shift concerns?
Yeah, I mean,
or
obviously,
challenges?
when problems are brought to us, we try to deploy some of our tools to see exactly when the problem's occurring, when we have problem areas, what times, and so forth. So if we have a smaller subset of areas to deploy where we're having numerous issues, we can take more of a tag team approach. Kind of a wolf pack is kind of what we've called it before. We'll just deploy to an area and have a lot of enforcement and education at certain times, and it's easier to focus those on our known problem areas. That what you guys send me on what you're hearing from your folks and where the problems are. I mean, we can't be everywhere, obviously, but when we can pinpoint a location, it would definitely help us to be able to deploy in a more a more effective manner, I guess. Every roundabout's different, so some roundabouts have art in the middle. Those would be some challenges we'd have to work around to get clear lines of sight and things like that. We can do it, but those are just some of the things to take into consideration on the problem areas that we'd have.
Yeah, okay. Any other question? I've got one more from Councilor Taylor that I want to just clarify. So he wanted to make sure, so I just want to make sure, I guess, that everybody's clear. We're talking about a cost of $1,500 to sign a roundabout versus $50,000 for a beacon or a raised crosswalk. Is that correct?
Yes, so that's like just to put new speed limit signs
Yeah,
up.
okay, got it. Okay, so that's the difference there. And I do want to give Interim Corporate Counsel Legg a lot of thank you and kudos for really putting your brain power together on how we got to a point from 150 roundabouts down to the problem children, the problem areas. So that kudos go to you. So thank you very much for that. Yes, sir.
So I think that ability, as we were just all talking about, like deploying in just certain areas, I think, so that's probably step one. So we would need to get the data before we put the signs in, and then you could put the signs in, and then we can pick a time period, and then go back, collaborate, like look at before and after collision data, before and after, how many tickets did we write on this, or how many warnings did, to try to capture that data, and then see at the end of the day, if it's a year, if it's 6 months or whatever, did the sign have an impact? I think then that probably shaped something else. Like, okay, maybe we do this in more areas, or it had very minimal impact. We needed to deploy another strategy. So,
Perfect. So, with the permission of the committee, I would like. So, does anyone else have a proposal on how they would like to proceed forward with this? Because if not, I'm going to ask the committee to agree that we're going to ponder this strategy, and we'll call it the BPW strategy. Get feedback from your residents. I don't know if there's any feedback from any of the people who are sitting here tonight. We want your feedback. Really appreciate you being here to give us your comments. And so that that's how that's what we respond to, is when people are communicating with us. So thank you. But would everybody agree that we are going to take under consideration this BPW plan before we gather again and vote whether or not to recommend or not to full council?
Just a question. Are we're not amending at this time. So we'll kind of take that back, consider it, come back to another meeting, and then say, do we want to look at the original language that prior to the meeting, or amend it with the BPW strategy?
That is what I'm proposing.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's consider. Yes.
Okay. All right. Yes, sir.
Yeah, just to clarify too, I would love for the next meeting, if we can get some of that just baseline data on the roundabouts where they are, if we can see which ones have speed limits going in, which ones have multi-lanes, even thinking of like the PROAG process. And then the concept of budget, right? So what do you guys have planned and prepared from a engineering and a street department process to see where we're going? And then I would absolutely request if we can find a way to look at problem roundabouts or speeds, even Gleben Town specifically, as we saw tonight, just to kind of take into consideration those things so we can move a little faster on ones that may be outstanding that have issues, but just coming with data would be great.
And then I guess the only thing I would ask, just based on all of this experience that we've now had talking about it over the last 3-4 months, when we speak about this, we are talking about not the speed in the roundabout, which is how this is written. We're talking about, I'm tossing out the roundabout zone. I guess we have school zones, the roundabout zone. Literally, when you drive around, that 250 feet that starts with the advisory sign to the roundabout, another 250 feet on the other side when you come out the sign. So because if I just pick up the current and it says limit the speed to 20 miles an hour in a roundabout, to a lot of people that is just illogical, because you try and drive it, you can't go 15, whatever. So and so Benjamin, I'm going to look to you to help us create whatever that language is.
I can do that. Ultimately, each one of this committee's members can request from our office for us to draft a proposal. I want to make that clear that we're a tool and we're a resource for any council member who wants to have a proposal. This isn't, to Councillor Olson's statement, this isn't the amendment of the version of like version A is what it would be, or version B, a formal amendment of the ordinance. This is just a proposal. If you want to see what it looks like, what it might look like in a red line version, we can draft that for you. And then you can present that to the committee, and the committee can take a look at it. So you could have multiple versions there, but you formally then would act on it to accept a particular version to then take back to the council. So I can do that for you. I can create, it would be informal, right? It would just be a draft for this committee to review and see what it's like. Then you can say, we like this, we don't like this, and you can send it back. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Even though we are not taking any formal action tonight, that's just the next step, because I do want to make sure we have time for input from the community. Okay, are there any other questions about, about ordinance D 2696 before we move on to the next item on our agenda? And I know we have a hard stop.